What was your thoughts when you walked up to that deer? Because it's a 200-inch deer. Like, at what point did it set in what you just really did?
It grossed 202 and 2/8, and it net 192 and 5/8. The common base G3s and 4s. It's got split G2s. It's got stuff on the brows. The only thing it doesn't have is that drop time.
How high do you typically hunt?
I'm a 30-foot average guy.
Have you ever hunted without a scent lock suit, I guess? And have you compared the two?
Let me put it to you this way. Not using it is like trying to build a house with a ball peen hammer versus a claw hammer.
Joe, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. We tried this yesterday. We had technical difficulties, and now we are ready to rock. We have the stable internet connection, and it's gonna be fun.
It's horrible that you have to have internet to do anything anymore. At my house, I just don't have it. I don't need it. I don't use it. I'm an outside guy. I'd rather be out doing fishing, scouting, whatever. It's that time of year.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
internet's not a thing for me. I don't really think about it too much.
count your blessings, because internet's a great tool, powerful thing. But sometimes I wonder if you could go back in time and revert that and not be so connected all the time. There might be benefits to that too.
You can, and I can attest to that, because I'm not on the internet all the time.
Yeah,
I'm literally out doing stuff every weekend. I don't, I've got young kids and older kids, and we're always fishing or just out in the woods, hiking, kayaking, whatever. We just don't like sitting at home.
Yeah.
So,
well, I was in Michigan 2 summers ago, and obviously there's not a ton of big bucks up there. There's some, but it is a gorgeous state. We were up by Traverse City area for the Total Archery Challenge, and I was up there. I was like, man, if this place had big deer, there'd be a lot more people that lived here, because it's gorgeous, man. It's beautiful.
and that's where I was pretty much for the last 5 weekends, as I was up there steelhead fishing, as a matter of fact. And yeah, I love it up there. It's honestly my favorite place in Michigan. Is right over due west of Traverse City, right on Lake Michigan. I love it there.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah, it's really beautiful.
But like I said, there's bucks here, but you got to work. It's a lot of work to find the bigger ones. And most of them are down here in the southern part of the state, which is where I'm at now. I'm just outside of Ann Arbor.
Gotcha. Okay. And so obviously I've recorded with your dad a bunch over the years, and he's educated a bunch of people when it comes to deer hunting, the books and podcasts and articles and everything else. But I have to imagine, what was it like just for you bow hunting throughout your years? And I see you got a scent lock polo on, but what was that like throughout the years when you got your old man is John, and you obviously like hunting too and being outside. You're not on the internet, so it's like you are ate up by this. But what was that like?
Well, I wish I could say it was just, he had us out in the woods all the time and everything, but really, honestly, my parents divorced when I was really young, and myself and my younger sister went to live with my mom, and my 2 older brothers got to live with my dad. So I can't account for their experience, but we were really just an every other weekend get to see dad thing. It wasn't even like that for me personally. So I wish I could say, yeah, we spent all the time and I got to learn everything from him, but really it was a kind of a learn as you go. Um, and as I got older and when he came out with his first books, I actually had to read his books because it just didn't, by then I was an adult and I was doing my own thing and I had my own job and I didn't have a family yet, but there wasn't time. And how he is, he's a solo guy. He likes to hunt on his own. So
Yeah,
at that time, things didn't mesh with the schedules and the way things are. And really, honestly, I got the most out of our relationship in my early 40s.
yeah,
And I'll be 48 this year, so it's been the last like 8 years has been really the best time I've had with my dad, and me and him made a really good connection in the last, almost a decade. So
yeah. That's cool.
it's been good. But it's different. I did a lot more fishing when I was younger versus versus hunting. I still hunted and everything. I killed my first Michigan book deer in 1999, if that
Ok
tells you anything. And that
yeah,
was so 25 years ago,
yeah.
26. And I actually didn't kill another book deer in Michigan until 23.
Okay. So there was a
So,
big gap. So there was a big gap in there. Were you still hunting bow hunting a bunch or just kind of touch and go or
oh no, I'm very religious bow hunter.
yeah.
I'm
There was just that much of a dry spell.
um it was more of making the transition from focusing on just shooting deer to focusing on just mature deer.
Mhm.
Um, some of the deer I killed between 99 and 23 y- weren't very big deer, but it was the experience. I stalked one on the ground to within 7 yards, and it was like a 70-inch 6 point, and I shot that one in 2016. It's not a big deer, but how many people can say they stalked a deer on the ground and shot it with a bow within 7 yards?
Now, what was the conditions for that? Was it super windy, standing corn in the
It wa
timber?
it was actually on the edge of a field in my friend's property over near Grand Rapids. Um, and I was actually just stalking some does, and across the field, I seen this buck rubbing on a tree, so I started stalking up on him, and I'm literally in the middle of a it's just a CRP field, and I stalked through the field, and I got up behind him, and he turned just a little bit and gave me a shot at 7 yards with a quarter and away shot.
Wow.
So, and it was freaking one of the coolest hunts I've ever been on, and it was really awesome to have that happen. So
Yeah.
it's just different experiences between him and me. He had a job that afforded him a lot of time to be able to hunt where I'm a 9 to 5, I'm a normal 14-hour day guy. Or even right now I'm working 12 to 14 hours a day. You just happened to catch me at the right time when I had some time off
Yeah.
in between jobs. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Which that I mean, people I'm fortunate. I get a lot more. I don't work 12, 14-hour days. I do sometimes, but not necessarily like I get to pick my 12 to 14-hour days, what days those are. And there's some days where in the fall I have a lot more flexibility and I don't I don't take that for granted because when you're I mean, what is it like being a weekend warrior, working that many hours and then trying to you got the weekend and you're trying to figure it out as you go, and probably by Sunday, by the time you feel like you got to figure it out, you got to wait 6 more days.
um, really biggest, the thing that I'd say is the hardest aspect of it is I don't own property and I don't really know anybody that does. Like the last couple of years, I've actually got permission on really good properties, but previous to that, I was strictly public land. Knocking on a door in Michigan, you got to knock on 500 doors plus to get one person that says, "Yeah, sure, go ahead." And I just couldn't afford that kind of time to go knock on that many doors. So I was a public land hunter. And really what it comes down to is just finding a piece of public land that nobody pays attention to, and then really scouring it over and finding spots that just have everything that you need. I've got one that's right around the corner from this house. I literally found three apple trees back in the middle of they're a mile, 1.2 miles back from the road,
Wow.
and it's just in the middle of nothing. There's just no rhyme or reason to why there's apple trees there, and I found them, and it's been a great spot. 2 years ago, I had 7 shooter bucks visiting those trees just before season, and just for the first 2 weeks, and then after that, the apples were gone and they were gone.
Yeah.
So it's a lot harder here. There's just not the bucks will disappear once the food sources disappear in the rut. That happens during gun season here.
Yeah.
So that's a whole nother animal. There's a
Where where do you
10,000 people.
yeah, there is a ton of hunters in Michigan. Where do the deer go? I mean, like when like we hear that a lot, like the deer just disappeared, but they have to go somewhere. Or do they die? Do they find a tiny little sanctuary where there's no hunting? I mean, like where do those 7 shooter bucks go if you had to guess?
A lot of them go strictly nocturnal, and a lot of them will go to the private sections where they don't have as much pressure. Because when you're on state land, gun season, every piece of state land is pressured. I don't
Mhm.
the smallest piece is pressured um, to the biggest piece. There's just always gun pressure, and gun pressure in Michigan doesn't start the opening day. It starts 2 to 3 weeks prior to. So, November 15th is our opening day of gun season. It usually starts the last week of October through the first 2 weeks of November. They're People are in there setting up their stands. They wait until the last minute.
Yeah.
That's generally what happens. Where I'm already pretty much ready for next year, like 3.5 weeks ago. So I'm not going to visit those spots until September just to make sure everything is exactly how I need it, and it's going to be real quick and fast.
Hmm.
Where everybody else, they wait until the last minute here in Michigan, especially the gun hunters. They just
So you have to focus, like you almost have to get. I don't want to say like get it done, but like you, especially when it's an apple tree, like your window of opportunity is so narrow, just because like when things are actually getting really good, everyone starts going onto the public, and it just you know dials back activity almost instantaneous.
yeah, it's that, and like you got like different types of apples too. You have apples that drop like just before seasonal start. They'll drop like mid-September, and then there's another type and I don't know the types. I kind of recognize them from what they are. And then you got apples that will drop early October through mid-October, and then you've got apples that will hang on until November,
Mhm.
or sometimes even later, which is one of my private properties that I got permission on. It's got trees that hold apples up until November. So that's a great piece of property when everybody else is out in the public land now. And I love my public land spots, but yeah, you have to time it. You have to time it pretty precise, and usually it's the first week on a lot of the public land that I hunt. If you're not successful in the first week, your chances probably decrease by 75%.
How do you make the most out of that first week? I mean, obviously being prepped right now is a big part of it, but I mean, that's a short window and the conditions can be hot. I mean, there's a lot of things that could be unfavorable during that first week.
Vacation and sick time. That's for real. For real. It's vacation and sick time. With my job, I'm a heavy equipment operator. Of course, we're union, so I can take off time for vacation whenever I need. So I usually uh, will plan that first weekend, and then I'll take a couple days prior to, or the couple days after, depending on how season falls.
Hmm.
And that way I've got a couple days during the week when hopefully there's not very many people out there. But most of the state land that I have has very minimal bow hunters. The largest piece is 1,900 acres, and there's 6 other bow hunters besides myself.
Wow.
So, but gun season, there's probably 300 people that
Seriously?
hunt it. Oh, absolutely. You can't walk 200 yards without seeing at least 40 people. It's absolutely horrendous. But they just don't bow hunt. They are strictly gun hunters. They don't even. I don't even think they crossbow hunt. One of the ladies that hunts the property, she was. I don't know if she still is, but she was the women's record holder for Michigan. She shot a 182 off of there
Wow.
with archery equipment.
Wow.
So yeah, and I think she was in her 50s or 60s when she did that.
That's pretty
So
cool.
yeah, I'm actually friends with her. I got her phone number. She's pretty cool.
Yeah.
She's in her 80s now, almost 90.
Wow.
So
That's pretty hardcore. Yeah. To be, yeah. That's like, so that had been 20, 30 years ago when she shot that.
yeah, it's been a reigning record for a while. I think it was in the 90s. So
Wow, that's fascinating. Do you know why there is random apple trees in Michigan? Like here in Illinois, I can think of only one farm that I've walked and like, oh wow, there's a volunteer apple tree and it's an old pasture piece. But um, and then like in Pennsylvania, from my understanding, that was like part of the deal. Like if you built a house, people would plant apple trees. So like there's some old places where the houses are long gone and it was an old home site and there's some apple trees there still today. Do you have any guess why? Obviously, you mentioned it's a mile and a quarter back in the middle of nowhere, and there's 3 apple trees. Like, do you think a bird just ate an apple? Like had seeds and pooped them out, and that's where how they got
honest,
there?
honestly, it could have been a deer. I mean, it really could have been any animal. There is a house about 2 miles away. Uh, let's see, it would be to the west, that has a small, like he's got like 10 or 12 apple trees in his yard. So it very well could have been a deer eating an apple there because
Yeah.
the seeds, they don't digest the seeds. They're just like cows.
Mhm.
The cows, like if you have apple trees near cows, cows will, you know, they'll eat them and then they'll defecate them out. And then that's just what happens.
Yeah.
So, it could have been anything. It could have been a bird. It could have been raccoons. I mean, just anything that travels that ate the
Yeah.
seeds or had one in its mouth.
Yeah.
Lucky for me,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know.
When
So,
when you find a spot like that, how often does someone else know about that spot? Like you mentioned, just the general pressure. It's in finding the overlooked spot. I mean, how many times do you find something like, man, no one else could be back out here, or I'd be really surprised, and then come season, you're like, oh, someone else knows about this spot.
um, the spots like I'm gonna go back to those apple trees. Anywheres that you can access it from the easy ways, it is like the thickest, nastiest briar patches that you could possibly ever want to go through. And I have made a route around them to where I don't have to make an open path to those. There's actually a small lake right by, and I can actually kayak across the lake and come in from the back side. It's right along the edge of the bedding area, which is just a giant grass, marshy swamp. It's like all that really tall, like 6 foot grass.
Hmm.
And they hide in there, they bed in there. I can sit in the tree and watch them from there. I've done it a few times, and it drives you nuts when you see them and they won't come in. But
Yeah.
but you find a different way in so people don't know that you're in there. And most of the time when they get into them briars, they'll overlook everything. Oh, it's too thick to go through. I'm not going through that. They'll turn around and go the other way. Humans are pretty much kind of like deer, path of least resistance. If you don't make it easy for them, they're not going to go there. They don't want to do any work.
Yeah.
So, you
Yeah.
know, that's what I've found, anyways, at least in Michigan. These
Sure.
guys, the guys in Michigan, especially the gun hunters, they just want to sit somewhere where they're going to have the best opportunity. And 90% of the time is field edges.
Hmm.
They're all, especially in since what I think it's been since 2015. They have the straight wall cartridge thing now here in
Hmm.
Michigan. So, that opened up an additional 250 yards versus a shotgun,
Hmm.
unless you had a really good shotgun. So nowadays they want someplace where they can maximize that effectiveness, and they'll sit
Hmm.
field edges, which is not where you're going to see what we're looking for.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Do you primarily saddle hunt?
oh, 100%. I tried hunting out of a tree stand once in the last 10 years, and I couldn't even figure out how to draw my bow. I kept hitting the tree. I'm like, how do people use these things? So I actually had my saddle in with me, and I just went up above that stand and sat in my saddle. So
Yeah.
I just I don't know how to do it anymore.
Yeah, was there a learning curve when you got started? Because I feel like for a lot of people, saddle hunting can be a little bit intimidating. There's like adjustments to that. What advice do you have? And you run a large saddle hunting Facebook group too. But um, what what are some tips, some basic tips that you feel that most people overlook when it comes to saddle hunting? Because I feel that most guys started hunting out of a tree stand. It's most people started in a tree stand and then they go to saddle hunting. Did you start in a tree stand and then go to saddle, or did you start as saddle hunting? And I know I asked
I
like 5 questions there, so sorry.
I honestly I started by standing on branches. We didn't even use, you know, we didn't use anything. And then my dad, when I got a little bit older, because I started when I was 12, and then when I got a little bit older, my dad, gave me a saddle, and I think I was like 14, or right around there, in between 12 and 14. Um, right around 1991, I started using a saddle, and I never went back. You
Hmm.
know, um, it was pretty much standing on branches before that. Just hoping you don't fall. Just don't fall, which I have. I fell out of a tree and broke my arm the one time when I was young, and but it happens. Luckily, I wasn't very high. I was probably only like 8, 9 feet off the ground, just sitting on a branch, just trying to get off the ground. Um, and as far as advice, and Okay, the saddle hunting group is Saddle Hunter Nation. We got almost 59,000 members, probably close right at that right now. Um, but one of the things I see with the saddle hunting group and just seeing what everybody does is they're taking something inherently very simple and way overcomplicating it, with a lot of different things that just, in opinion, my opinion, is just unnecessary. Presets are super easy, even on public land. It's really easy to do presets with sticks and just not leave all your sticks in the tree. I do that on public land. Um, it's just inherently so much easier than what they make it out to be. And it seems like if they just keep it simple, it would be a lot easier. They just adding so much stuff and then worrying about the weight. It's not about weight, it's about bulk. It's not about saving this much weight. Oh man, I got to get down under 10 pounds for my whole set. I could care less if my backpack weighs 50 pounds. It's the fact that it's not 2.5 feet wide and 3.5 feet tall, standing up off my back, trying to break brush with my bow and everything else that you might possibly carry, and strapping a backpack to the back of that as well. So it's about bulk and being able to maneuver through a lot quieter and things like that, and a lot of things I see people worry about is they worry about making noise coming in and going out of the woods, and that has a lot to do with it. When you make it really simple, you can get in and out really fast. And even if you're going to make a little bit of noise, it's okay. Deer are used to hearing noises in the woods. You're in the woods. You're not walking down a paved street where you can walk super quiet and there's not a leaf or a stick, but you try and minimize it as best as you can, but you're going to make some noise. And that's okay. The deer are used to hearing squirrels running around and chipmunks. And has anybody ever heard a turkey in the woods? They are one of the loudest animals I've ever heard in my life. I'm just, so that's one of the things. Is just keep it simple, and it'll all work itself out.
What is simple to you?
Um, I would say presets are simple. Don't try and have all the like if somebody comes out with a new piece of gear, you don't have to have everything. If you find a system and it's simple and it works and you don't need all that extra stuff, don't buy it. And I know saddle companies are going to hate me for that, but get what you need and always have a backup, of what you need too. Like I got like 12 or 14 saddles. So, if one of them, if one gets wet, I don't have to worry about drying it out. You should always have two of everything. That's kind of just how I live my life with everything. If I need one flashlight, I buy two. If I need, anything I need, I usually buy two of.
Yeah.
And that's just so if one is not usable, I've got a backup and it's ready to go and I can grab it and go. Like I mean, it's even the same way with like for heavy equipment. I've got 30 cat keys. I've got, plethora of every other key because you never know when you're going to have just jump out and you can't always have a key ready.
Mm-hmm.
So, multiples of everything,
Yeah. So really preparation is key. You mentioned the tree preps and having to everything, whatever your system ends up being. When you talk a little bit about prepping a spot, I know that's something that John talks about a lot. But what is prepping a site to you? It's May now and things are greening up quite a bit. But how if someone wanted to prep a spot, what and how is that to you?
Um, well, if we want to use right now as an example, because this is the time of year that we do um get our spots set for next year, we're basically going out making sure that where we want to shoot to is cleared, and nothing's in the way of where that shot's going to be. There's no vines growing up the tree, so it's stuff that we don't have to do in the fall. It's making sure that any large sticks for entry and exit are out of the way if a log's falling over. Because a lot of the spots we use have been spots we've been using for years. Now, if it's a brand new spot, I'm gonna figure out what my shot's gonna be and where the deer are most likely gonna go through, whether it's a destination location or a transition zone, or a lot of the same stuff my dad does, you know, and it's just setting up for those shots and then having it ready because everything's going to grow now,
Yeah.
so those shoots that you don't notice that are in your way, that's when you go in the fall. You can go in with a pair of hand pruners or just a small couple things, and you only got to trim a couple of little twigs. You're not in there mass clearing brush right before season and really disrupting an area.
Hmm.
And again, the scent lock thing helps.
Hmm.
And then one of the other things for simplicity for presets, like if you're hunting state land and you're going to set sticks, yes, people don't like leaving their sticks in the woods for long periods of time, but if you're getting up there with 4 sticks and you leave your top 2 sticks out and you pull out 2 bottom sticks, how much weight are you actually carrying out when you go out into the woods? There's just a lot less that you have to worry about, a lot less work. Your first stick you're setting from the ground, your second stick is almost, you can almost set it without even thinking about it. And then you're just, everything else is already there, you know.
Hmm.
So having everything set up is a big deal. Having everything preset.
Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting point, or it's something that people really. Okay, I'm not gonna generalize myself. When I think of saddle hunting, I think of I'm gonna go in there blind and I'm gonna pick a tree on the fly and I'm gonna hunt, and that works sometimes. But when what you're saying is like the preparation is key for being able to slip in when it matters versus kind of bumbling around and like trying to figure out what tree it is or trying to find the sign. Obviously, that can work, but the preparation, it sounds like, is one of the key pillars of success with what you have going on.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, if you go in the morning and you're like my dad and myself, I'm actually worse than my dad. My dad will go in about an hour, hour and a half before daylight. I like to actually be about 2 hours
Oh my gosh.
before. I just like having extra time. I don't like pushing myself to, oh man, I'm in a rush. I like to meander. I like to take my time getting through the woods. So I go early. And that's the easiest way to do it is just to give yourself time. If you're in a rush, you're gonna
Make
make
mistakes.
mistakes.
Yeah.
So but if you go out in the morning and you've got to find a tree, you've got to set your sticks, you got to figure out everything in the dark. How do you really know where you're at if you haven't been there in the daytime? During the day when you can see where the sign's at. And that's what September is all about. And maybe is to go in and see where the sign is at, because you might have 7 or 8 different trees on a piece of property. Only one of them might be good.
Hmm.
All the other ones are useless that year. And it can change from year to year depending on the way pressure is and on neighboring properties or on the same property. So, it's just a matter of just being prepared and
Hmm.
paying attention to what's there. I mean, it's just a lot easier to go in the dark knowing you have a destination rather than going in blind and going trying to pick a tree and hope that it's the right spot. And then daylight comes around and you're like, oh man, I should have been like 40 yards over that way.
Yeah.
Now you got to get down and you got to move, which is fine if there's nothing there. But I've had spots where I've done that and I was literally like my second stick up and a target buck walked by and I'm standing on the side of a tree hugging it. Like, damn, this sucks.
Yeah.
And it happens. It's just what it is. So
Yeah.
it's hunting, not killing.
That's
It,
for
it
sure.
and it makes for a fun experience, I'll tell you, you know.
Yeah.
So
What when you're speed scouting in September to verify whatever sign and kind of put together your plan for the beginning of the season, what specifically are you looking for?
um the mature bucks are gonna be rubbing out in the early September, the mature bucks, your older bucks. So I'm looking for the rubs, I'm looking for them starting to make their scrapes, basically all the same stuff that my dad's taught everybody for years. I've been practicing that stuff since I read his books back in the shoot, those came out what, like 2003. So, I've been using just the same practice. It's just going in and looking for what's there. And, is it a transition zone? Are they, is the, if it's a food destination, is there mast on the trees? Is there acorns? Is there apples? Um, you know, Beech nuts, hickory nuts. That's all stuff that they'll eat. You know, is there pear tree? Are there pears there? You know, just whatever's around for whichever spot you're scouting at the time.
Hmm. What's one whitetail strategy or something that differs quite a bit than what your dad does? Like, is there something that you guys kind of poke fun at each other about when it comes to strategy?
No, I don't give him a hard time because he's earned his keep. You
Fair,
know,
fair.
so really honestly, he is leaps and bounds above what I am, and I give him that respect, and I don't hound him about anything. He gives me a hard time sometimes because, like, I'll use Kansas as an example, and it's actually in my story that we wrote in
Yeah,
Deer Hunting. Um, I knew that it was going to be really windy on that first morning hunt. They were calling for 50-mile-an-hour gusts with like a 35 to 40-mile-an-hour sustained wind. And when the winds are like that, I'm just not feeling it.
yeah.
You know, I'm not feeling it. I'm like, no, I don't want to go sway in a tree for a while. So I was actually trying to talk myself into going hunting. I was like, no, I'm just gonna stay home and sleep in, you know. And then the next morning came around, and my dad and my brother were both up at like 4, and you know, you kind of can sense that they're awake and whatnot. And I had this sense that, you know, something's not going to be right if I don't get up and go hunting. And I did. I got up at 4:30 and I was out the door before they were. But uh, my roommate actually makes fun of me all the time. He's like, I've never seen anybody that can just get up and be gone in 5 minutes, and that's just how I am. I'm like up and just
Gone.
yep. I'm awake and out the door. It's just like I don't have time to mess around. And you know, and yeah, if I wouldn't have went out that morning, my dad or my brother probably would have sat where I sat, and things would have been different. But they didn't because I talked myself into getting up out of bed, and I'm glad I did because it was like a 13-mile-an-hour sustained wind with an 18-mile-an-hour gust.
Oh, so it wasn't what they forecasted at all.
Yeah, like that whole morning, and then mid-afternoon is when the heavy winds came in, and I was done. I was only in the tree for an hour and like 20 minutes, so and I
Yeah,
was tagged out. So
yeah, which I want to talk about that. The one thing, which I know your dad talked about on the like the out of state trips where you guys make a point to scout for a couple days, and then that's when your hunting
yep.
begins. I think that is such an important thing, and obviously it's worked out really well for you. You guys do exceptional on your out of state trips. It seems like, which just there was a comment on the YouTube channel not long ago, and it was breaking. It was an old video about what some of the better hunters have in theory, and someone made a comment of, like the biggest thing is there's big deer where those guys hunt, which 100% agree with, because I feel like there's a lot of really good hunters all across the country, but maybe they live in Michigan, and then you guys go to Kansas and usually do really really good, and you guys did exceptional this year.
Well, Kansas, like when we go out of state to hunt, like Iowa, Kansas, Ohio, we're there for a purpose. So there is no sightseeing in between. Like we go out there in the first 3 days are set up from daylight to dark. I mean, that's what we do for 3 days, and then it's get some sleep, and then 4 o'clock, 4:30 in the morning, we're up and we're in the tree the very next day. There's no, and that's the way it is until you shoot a deer. Every day you come in, we'll usually come in for about an hour, grab a bite to eat, and then we're right back out there. We hunt hard. We spend a lot of time in the woods. In the area that we hunt in Kansas, big deer is a 150. You know, we're not in an area where 160s, 170s are commonplace. You
Hmm.
know, they've been getting better, but I don't think there's as many hunters in the area where we are. My dad would know the statistics a lot better than I would.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think the first 4 years I was out there, I don't think I seen a deer over 150
Mm.
for 4 years. You
Hmm.
know, my brother shot a couple that were a 160 something and then a 170 something out there 2 years back to back. And those are the biggest deer I seen out there until the one I shot. And this one, I didn't even know it was there. I didn't even, we had one picture of it on camera that we didn't even notice
Hmm.
until like 2 days later when I was going through all the pictures. Like, there is one of them right there because it looked like a different deer. It
Yeah.
was kind of a fuzzy picture, so it was hard to really place it until you really got in there and looked at it.
Yeah.
And I do have the rack sitting right here.
Yeah. And so everyone listening, it is a really, really, really big buck that you shot in Kansas. A Boone and Crockett. What did it gross again?
It grossed 202 and 2/8, and it net 192 and 5/8. Um, One of the things that the scorer had mentioned is he said this particular rack has everything except for a drop tine to make it a non-typical. If it would have had a drop tine as well, it would have had every feature that makes it a non-typical. So it's got the common base G3s and 4s, it's got split G2s, it's got stuff on the brows. The
Hmm.
only thing it doesn't have is that drop tine. So it's got everything but.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's the deer of a lifetime. That's what everyone dreams of. And so, we you kind of told me the story. I think it was last week when we were on the phone, but it's a rut hunt, man. Like it's what everyone dreams of, and I want to hear it again.
so again, we set up the first 3 days, which was Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, and it downpoured on Monday, so we didn't even really get to do much. So it was even more of a scramble on Tuesday. And when Tuesday night came around, we were just tired. It had been a long day of doing what we were doing and getting ready. And we checked the cameras, and we seen an 11 point at this particular tree on camera, just cruising by like 3 times during the night. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. My dad's like, well, I want you to shoot the biggest deer this year, or at least try, because I normally repetitively have been the smallest, which is fine. It's still big deer, it's still in the 140s, so
Yeah.
I'm not complaining by any means. And I was like, all right, whatever, that's cool. So again, I was talked to myself out of hunting in the morning the night before, but that morning I got up and I had to go. And I was in my tree and situated by 6 a.m. Winds were blowing down through from the west to the east, 13 mile an hour with little light gusts. And I didn't see anything until 7:05. And out of the corner of my eye, I seen two does skirting in from the northeast through this valley. And I caught movement to the right of them, which was downwind of them. And when I looked over, I seen this buck, but I didn't really know how big it was. I was looking for that 11 point. He had that same split G2 on the right side. And I seen that split G2, and I'm like, okay, that's my buck I'm looking for. And I started prepping for the shot, and he was just following the scrape line coming through the woods along the edge of the wood lines from the CRP field. And when those does got about, I'm going to say they're probably about between 40 and 60 yards away, somewhere's in there, uh, he kind of picked up his pace and moved up and kind of cut him off because there's a Milo field off to my it would be to my back, which was to the southwest a little bit, kind of in the southwest edge of where I was sitting. And he didn't want him to go in there because Milo was down and he wouldn't have had any cover. And he come in and kind of to intercept him, and he went right underneath me, and I shot him at 11 yards. And I double lunged him, and he didn't even know he was hit. He
Yeah.
literally just stood there watching those does, and then his legs got shaky and he just fell over. And I still hadn't paid attention to his rack, and he fell in the tall grass, so I couldn't see him from my tree,
Hmm.
you know. And I texted my brother. I said, I think it's a 13 or a 14 point. and and he's like, oh, cool. Is it down? And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to my truck right now. So I went to my truck, I changed my clothes, and I brought my truck around through the Milo field to go drag it out. When I walked up to him, I about fell over when I walked up to him. I was absolutely just flabbergasted as to how big it actually was. So it was like, wow. And I sent my dad a text and I said, I shot a big one, a really big one. And that's all I said. And I didn't say anything else. I didn't try and call him or nothing. And you know how it is when you shoot something like that, something bit your biggest deer ever.
Yeah.
My adrenaline was pumping. I drug it all the way to my car. I didn't even gut it. I drug it all the way to my truck about 45 yards, and I actually
Well, that's
pulled
I
it up
watched.
in the.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I watched the video with you and your dad, and he's like, he loaded this deer without even gutting it by himself, and you're like, I've had 2 hernias. I don't know why I did that, and I
I
got a good laugh out of that.
I honestly don't even know how I got it in the bed of my. It weighs more than I do, and I literally just pulled this deer up in the bed of my truck and was like, I just started driving towards the cabin, and I don't even know why I did it. I didn't even gut it. I didn't even pull my knife out. And my dad's like, "Well, why didn't you gut it?" I said, "I don't know. I just don't know why I didn't. I just wanted to get. I just wanted everybody to see it right now, you
Yeah,
know."
yeah,
And so that was pretty wild to have happen, you know. And now thinking back on it, I was really stupid to load that by myself because I have had 2 hernias and they're not a joke. They'll put you down. That put me down for 8 weeks when I had them repaired.
oh gosh.
And yeah, so to be able to do that by myself, I didn't even think about it. I literally just got it up to my truck. I got in the bed of my truck and I grabbed the antlers and I just heaved them up in there, you know, and it was pretty stupid of me to do, but
Yeah,
at the
adrenaline,
time I didn't care.
adrenaline. Yeah,
So
nothing but adrenaline. When you What was your thoughts when you walked up to that deer? Because I mean, it's a 200-inch deer, like, at what point did it set in what you just really did?
Um, I actually thought it was about a 180 because you, when you walk up to something like that, your mind just kind of it just kind of goes into overload, and you just don't know what you're really looking at for a second, you know.
Yeah,
And that was pretty much it. I was flabbergasted. I was like hard to talk. I couldn't even think. I actually drug it when I was dragging it past the trail camera. I lifted it up and held it in the trail camera like that to my for my dad and my brother to see, and none of them seen it, of course, until
yeah,
after, way after the fact. My dad got a laugh out of that. My brother did too, and you know, it's hard to put in words. It's hard to describe the feeling you have when you walk up on something, especially when you thought it was an 11. You know, maybe I thought it was an 11 point, but I was like, man, I think it's a 13 or 14, which
yeah,
still would have been cool,
yeah,
you know. But then you walk up on it and it's just this, there's just stuff everywhere on the antlers, you know, and there's 18 scoreable points on it and 24 total points. Like if you go by like the old school where you can hang a ring on it,
yeah,
it would have
yeah,
actually been 24. But the 1 inch or longer scoring method, there's 18 scoreable.
yeah.
So
When they have those common bases and those tines that roll in, they always end up scoring a lot better than what you think. I mean, when you hold that deer, it's like, holy cow, it's a giant. But like the extra stickers off the brows, like a lot of that adds up a lot faster than what you
it
think.
it does. But what really helped is actually the circumferences. There's 40 inches of circumferences on that deer,
That's a lot of that.
just in circumference.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is you think it really weigh a lot. It only weighs about 6 pounds. My
Wow.
brother shot a mainframe 8. It's a 10 point. It's got stickers off the brows. His antlers weigh twice as much as mine, and they're really close to being the same frame.
Hmm.
His are a little taller tines, but the density is just so much heavier. Which surprised me that this one wasn't broken off,
Yeah.
knowing that he shot it less than a half a mile away from where this tree was at in a different tree, you know, that it could have been that this one could have been broken off at any time, just fighting over a doe
Did he
with the
break
other
off any?
deer.
Did he break off any tines at all?
Um, he's got a couple of little chips on the tip, on a couple of the tips, like the sticker on the back of the G2 here's got a little one. This one was mushroomed over from I don't know how good you can see it on
Yeah.
camera,
Yep.
but it's mushroomed over. He's got a little chip off of the front of this one. Um, everything's mushroomed on the back of the here, and the tip of the main G3 right there
Hmm.
is broken off. And but other than that, no, he's pretty whole.
Yeah.
So and it
Man,
was hard as hell to cape around them bases because they're like claws. I don't know how if you can see them, but they're like claws,
yeah,
and they kind of curl down into the skull, and it was hard to cape underneath those without tearing anything or
yeah,
breaking any of the tines off.
yeah.
So
Well, is Kansas your favorite state to hunt now?
actually, I enjoy Iowa more.
Iowa?
Actually,
Yeah,
yes, I do. I really like Iowa. One of the places, and I think it's just because of what we have to hunt there. One of the places we hunt there is an island, and it's you can only access it by boat, and it's just really cool place to hunt, and and it's just a different way of hunting out there. It's just everything's kind of raw. The deer just they're big and they just don't care. They'll run you over if you're standing in their way. At least where I was at.
sure.
So it, I still think I like Iowa just a hair more. I like the frequency of Kansas because Kansas is a 2 point state where Iowa's a four. So you can go every other year to Kansas versus
Yeah,
every 4 year to Iowa.
yeah.
So
But yeah, at least you get a better rotation. And who knows what will happen. I feel like Kansas is going to continue to get additional point creep. I feel more than likely, just with how everything else goes along too. So I mean, it's uh, it's hard to say, but I guess we will see. We'll find
well,
out.
it has a lot to do with the amount of hunters that are applying and the amount of tags that they have. And as more and more hunters, non-resident hunters start applying, yes, they're going to have to increase their point requirements so that way they can allow other people to hunt there because it's just got to be that way. So eventually, yeah, I'm assuming Kansas will follow suit and become a 3 and then a 4 point state, or they can break it up like Iowa does and do. Iowa has some zones where you can get drawn on 1 to 2 points
Hmm.
versus but you can't hunt other areas. You have to hunt that one zone, and then they've got zones that are 5 point zones, which
Yeah,
are that's really got to suck. You know,
that's where I drew last. Yeah, and
yeah,
it's a long time to wait, but it was
it
worth
is.
it. It was worth it. Yeah, yeah.
So, one of the other things too that we kind of thought about after I shot this deer is another bunch of out of state hunters bought a big chunk of property over there, and in Kansas near where we're hunting. We don't hunt on their property, but it's pretty close. It's one of our properties is almost right directly across the street from there, and the deer are free roam. They don't have high fences or anything like that. It's just a regular single wire cow fence to keep the cows in if they pasture cows there. Um, but they have feeders and mineral sites, and they have stuff out all year round for these deer. And they've been there. This would have been the fourth year for them there.
Mm,
So this last season was their fourth year owning that property, and I think that has a lot to do with some of the larger sized deer that we've seen this year because
hmm.
we've seen at least 3 or 4 deer that were in the 160s or better.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, that's always it's always a I feel like some people feel like that doesn't work or it's not worthwhile, but the guys that do it swear by it. And so I feel like that probably the deer you shot and the deer you saw is probably a could be a product of that for sure.
Yeah, my dad's probably going to say something. Oh, you shouldn't have said that. I don't care. Honestly, there's no reason for me not to say it. You know what I mean? Because it is what it is, and it's the truth, and the truth will always set you free for everything. And those guys doing what they do, and I think with any mineral site or food supply, if you're going to try and grow antlers, it takes time. It's not going to happen in the first year. Most all those companies like Lucky Buck and Drop Tine or what's the B&J, or is that the
Yeah.
other one?
Yeah.
Um, you know, they'll tell you it takes 3 to 5 years to produce the results that you're looking for on an ultra managed property. So, with the deer that are out there, nobody really looks at them until they're at least in the 140s. So it just gives them a better opportunity,
Hmm.
and a deer that's being fed a good mineral and is getting a good mineral, I think could go from a 130, 140 1 year to a 160, 170 the next. It really honestly depends on how their body adapts to the minerals.
Is there, whenever you go home from an out of state trip, whether it's Kansas or Iowa, and you go back to Michigan, do you ever say like, I don't even know why I hunt Michigan? Like it's not fun. Like, does that ever cross your mind, or just because it's
No,
like two different subspecies of whitetails what you're hunting, like between the two states?
no, I love hunting Michigan. Eh, If I had to, if I couldn't hunt anywhere else ever again other than Michigan, I would be absolutely 100% happy with that. I love
What?
hunting
Why? Yeah.
Michigan.
Why is that?
Oh, it's a serious challenge. It is a serious challenge. If you like to challenge yourself as a hunter, Michigan's where it's at. It's work. It ain't easy, and yeah, my dad's put in a lot of work to get what he's got in Michigan, and everybody's kind of scoffs at, the 115s and the 120s and the 125s, but come to Michigan and hunt here for a while on public land, and you're going to understand, and even free permission land, you know, you're going to understand that it's not just hunting. You've got to put in a lot of work to it, and you've got to outsmart a deer that walks in the woods and looks up.
Yeah.
They don't just come into a woods and do their feeding and kind of look around. They will literally. I've watched them scan trees. Watched them. They'll come right in and they'll just literally scan trees looking for something that's not supposed to be there, and they find you most of the time. And that's where the saddle comes in too. You can
Yeah.
hide behind the tree, and as much as everybody hates to hear it, scent lock, it works. I don't care what anybody says. I'm not as anal about it as my dad, but with the beard and everything like that, I definitely use the face covering and stuff like that. And I keep mine up and in the totes just like he does and everything like that. But I'll wear the same suit 3 or 4 times before I throw it through a dryer. And I haven't really noticed, a huge difference in that.
Hmm.
But I also don't I have a tote that's specific for the suit that I've been wearing. So as soon as I get down out of the woods, I take it off and put it in that tote. It
Hmm.
doesn't sit exposed other than when I'm out in the tree.
Do you feel like you get away with a lot more when you're by wearing that? Have you ever hunted without a scent lock suit? I guess, and like, have you compared the two?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Uh, Before Scentlock, I used to get winded and picked all the time. All the time. It's just with the Scentlock, if it made it a 50% better chance, I would still swear by Scentlock.
Yeah.
I think the percentage is a lot higher than that because I never get winded. I never get winded anymore. And I used to smoke in the tree up until about 5 or 6 years ago.
Uh-huh.
And as long as I had my scent lock and I pull my face covering back over and put my gloves back on, I still wouldn't get winded even then. So it was just, uh, everybody likes to compare it to dogs and everything else. And it, it is what it is. It's just another tool in the toolbox. You know, you can choose to use it or you can choose to not to. And to each their own. If I feel for me, it gives me a better chance and a better opportunity, and I'm going to take advantage of that.
Hmm.
And it's not super expensive, and it's pretty well built clothing, and the it's windproof and water resistant most cases, which is another bonus to it. It's half the price of Sitka or First Light,
Right.
so and I think it does a better job. The camo pattern, you know, eh, as a lot of people have said, the camo is for the hunter, not for the deer.
Yeah.
You could literally go out there in an all black suit and still see deer and still be able to kill deer. You can go out there. Our forefathers used to do it in red plaid,
Yeah.
in suspenders, and they would kill deer. So camo's for the hunter. It's not for the deer. I don't care what the pattern is. I just can't see spending that much money on one piece of clothing. I think one of the guys that came to the Whitetail workshop this year, he spent like $600 on a jacket from Sitka, and I'm like, really? It's just why? But hey, it's your money. Spend it how you want, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So,
No, I've never used scent lock. I've been every time I talk to your dad, I'm like, oh man, I should just try it. Like it's like I feel like I don't know why I haven't, but um it almost like admittedly almost seems like too good to be true.
well,
Like and I feel like that's most people.
let me put it to you this way. Not using it is like trying to build a house with a ball peen hammer versus a claw hammer. The claw is just another tool. I mean, yeah, you can have a pry bar that's got
Yeah.
the nail puller on it, and then you can have your ball peen. But if you can combine the two, which is a claw hammer, why not just use that? You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
It's just a tool in the toolbox. And if it even if it boosts your chances 30%,
Yeah.
who doesn't want a 30% better chance? Wouldn't you go for a 30% better chance of winning the lottery? A
For sure.
30% better fuel mileage in your car? 30% can be
That's a
a
lot.
lot of it's a lot when you really think about it. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So eh, any advantage you can get is worth it. You
Yeah.
know, that's why people saddle hunt because it gives you a better advantage. So why not use everything that's going to give you a better advantage rather than just nitpick a few little things here and there. When you add everything together is when it really starts to build up.
Yeah.
So
How high do you typically hunt?
I'm a 30-foot
Gosh,
average
that's
guy.
so high. That is so high.
It, it
Even in Kansas, are you 30 feet in Kansas too?
no, because a lot of the spots my dad, we're all together when we set them up.
Mhm.
And there it depends on the trees and it
Sure.
depends on the terrain and what we're hunting over, you know. So a lot of the trees that are just what we
Gnarly
need.
Kansas trees, yeah.
Yeah, like the locust trees, a lot of locust trees, you don't get as high. You're
Yeah.
gonna get 20 feet. I think the tree I shot this one out of is 18 feet
Okay.
to my feet. That's
Okay.
how I measure it too. Is I always measure it to my feet, not to like where my head is or anything. It's to my feet.
God.
My highest tree that I have is 46 feet.
What about the shot angle? Are you ever concerned about that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. When I'm that high up in the if I'm 46 feet up in the tree, I will not shoot inside 10 yards.
Right.
I will not take a shot inside 10 yards from the base of the tree. Not even I won't even think about it. It's almost like it's just too close. You're almost shooting straight down on them. It feels like anyways.
Yeah.
So usually it's like in that 15 to 25-yard range. Um, I'm I practice my bow out. I'm good out to 60, but I usually don't shoot any further than 45.
Mhm.
So that's just where I draw my line. I know I can kill stuff inside 45 yards.
When when you're hunting that high and the 46 feet is obviously that's super high. That's extreme. But is the reason you're up there? I feel like there's two benefits. One was probably what if you had scent, it would disperse further away because you're so far up. And I'm just talking in theory here. And the number two is it just to so you don't get picked off by a Michigan buck.
Yeah, that tree is definitely in Michigan, and actually what it is it's kind of got a ridge along the one
Okay,
side. Um, and if I was any lower than that, if I was down at like my normal 30 feet, when they come over that ridge, they'd be looking me straight in the eyes.
eye level. Yeah,
And really, that's what it is. That's the only reason why I have that tree that high. I I don't really like when you're up that high, the tree moves. That
Oh
tree
yeah,
sways back and forth pretty good. And
yeah.
I'm not afraid of heights by any means, but you're like, wow, that's quite the movement,
Yeah.
you
If you
know.
fall, you die. 46 feet, you're gonna die.
Uh, falling really is never. It, I never really thought about a f- like taking a fall. It's more just like the swaying of the tree is the biggest thing. I just don't like to feel the sway of the tree that much. And trees get pretty thin at 46 feet,
Yeah.
so they move pretty good, especially in a stiff wind, But I'm a certified wind tower technician, so heights are not a big deal, you
Uh-huh.
know. So it's definitely just one of those things. It just feels different being up that high. 46 feet is really high, and it seems high when you're just talking about it. But when you're at 46 feet to your feet, that's you're up there.
Yeah,
That's a long ways. And if it wasn't for that ridge, the ridge is the only reason I have that tree that way. There's just no other reason. And they use the top of that ridge as a transition zone. They're
mhm,
transitioning along that ridge there. So I have to be where I'm not right in their direct line of sight. And even at 46 feet, I'm really only about 10 or 15 feet above their head
sure.
when they're on the top of that ridge. And that ridge is only like 22 yards. So it's still almost being real close. But up at 46 feet, there's lots of branches. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Have you killed a deer out of that set yet?
No,
Not
no,
yet.
I have not. I did kill one off of that property 3 years ago. I shot an 8 point that went 116. It's a Michigan book deer.
Love it.
And that's actually my biggest Michigan buck. My biggest
Well,
Michigan buck is a 116 and 4/8. And I shot it just probably about 100 yards away from that at the bottom where the apple trees are.
okay.
So once the apples are gone off of the apple tree on that property, the deer move back further and they start getting the beech nuts and the hickory nuts that fall a little bit later along that corridor. And the hickory nuts, they can't eat those unless the squirrels open them up.
Ah, I didn't
Because
know that.
yeah, they can't crack the shells open, the outer husks.
Uh-huh.
So they wait for the squirrels to pop those open, but the beech nuts they can get to those
I'll
pretty
be darned.
easy.
Is there how much ag country or how much ag is in some of the areas that you hunt?
That's actually kind of cool about where I hunt. A lot of the state land is actually contracted, and they actually have farmers that come and plant corn and soy and winter wheat. And have you ever heard of a daikon radish?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, the Japanese radishes. They plant those here every fourth year to put nitrates back into the soil without having to spread manure. And they just till them under. They don't actually harvest them. They just till them under at the beginning of the year.
Uh-huh.
So they run those on almost all the state land around here. Cornfields are all over. This year, a lot of my state land is going to be in corn,
Okay.
which is
Is it
really kind of cool about this little area over here.
yeah. Yeah, that was something I think it was when we recorded the cribs and, uh, John was talking about, like, the crop rotations and how much it makes an impact on a parcel, and it really hit home when I started thinking, I'm like, Yeah, that makes a lot of sense," of how much of a difference it makes."
Yeah, yeah. The one property that I killed my buck on will be in corn this year, and that property is really it's good for the apples in the early season, and then the corn just before the rut. So
Mhm.
just like mid-November. And so half of the property is kind of worthless every other year, you
Yeah.
know. It just I don't do anything with it. Like last year I didn't even go check my trees or nothing. It's along soy. They just they don't like to be seen.
Yeah.
Mature bucks don't like to be seen. So and corn's a really good to hide in.
Yeah.
So
Well, Joe, I really appreciate your time here. It was fun to chat about all the different things you have going on, and your Kansas buck and hunting public in Michigan. Is there anything you want to share with anyone?
just keep at it, you know. The payout you don't have to kill a deer to be happy in the woods. Enjoy what nature provides with you, and just enjoy every minute in the woods because if the world keeps going the way it's going, we're losing hunters every year, and we just got to keep the younger generations involved and keep them up and take a kid out hunting, take somebody out hunting that's never done it before and get them interested and keep the sport going because that's what's going to kill it is just people losing, not giving the next generation the interest.
Hmm.
So, you know, take somebody hunting, even if you even if you're used to doing it by yourself, Dad.
Well,
I just like to give him. That's the only thing I give him a hard time about is him being such a solo hunter. You
I mean,
know,
there's a lot. I feel like there's a lot. I mean, honestly, I like hunting by myself a lot too. And
I do too, but I do try and get my kids involved and if they've got their friends that want to try it, I'll take them out during gun season when it's just it's a turkey shoot during late doe season to go shoot some does,
Yeah.
you know, and it keeps their interest. It gets them interested in it, and if you can just build any interest, is better than zero interest. And you know, because it really, honestly, being deer hunters are a dying breed, and it's a dying sport, even though it doesn't seem like it is. It really is if you look at the numbers.
Mm.
If you just look at the sales records for every state, they've been on the decline for more than a few years. So, we just got to keep building interest in with other people and keep the interest alive because it's a fantastic way to just get out of the house, unplug.
Yeah.
That's it. Just
Yeah.
unplug.
No, I
So,
agree with that. Well, Joe, thank you so much. I encourage everyone to check out Saddle Nation or Saddle Hunter Nation Facebook group and follow along with
yep.
what you have going on there. And I want to say thank you once again.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for having me on.